I didn't think the night my daughter came into money would be the night she pushed me into the rain. Came down hard, like handfuls of gravel. Her brand new security lights were so bright they washed all the color out of the porch and made my eyes sting. My suitcase split on the concrete. Shirts and socks slid out like things nobody wanted. A framed photo landed face down and tapped once. Sad little sound in the water. "Take one more step and I'm calling the police," Heather said. Her voice was steady. She stood with her arms folded under a silk robe I had never seen before. This week it looked expensive and cold. Behind her, Eddie leaned his shoulder against the doorframe like it was built to hold him up. He crossed his arms and smirked. The kind of smirk people wear when they think they've won something. "You'll never see a penny of it, Dad," my daughter said. "Not one." I bent slow, not to bow, but to pick up the photo before the water. Crept under the glass. I know the weight of a frame by touch. Cool glass, warm wood, soft corners from years of dusting. I turned it over and wiped my sleeve across it. Heather at 7, uneven pigtails because she wiggled too much to sit still. A gap where her baby tooth had been, her small hand in mine. The rain pinned a strand of her hair to her cheek. The old Heather would have tucked it back and laughed at the stupid weather. New Heather let it stick and kept her arms folded. "I mean it," she said. "Pass the walkway and I'm dialing 911. "I heard you," I said. I lifted the suitcase. By the broken handle, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I've learned that when you're being humiliated, moving fast only makes it worse. "Don't worry. I'm only taking what's mine." Eddie shifted like a man who'd practiced standing between people and the things they love. The ribbons. On the iron rail lifted in the wind and slapped the post in a soft clap, clap, clap. Clap! Like applause for a scene we all pretended we didn't know was coming, a glossy realtor flyer flapped against the mailbox. The mansion in the photo burned golden in a sunset that wasn't this one. "Start fresh," the headline said. "Start over, start without." The last part never needs to be printed. You feel it when your suitcase hits the concrete. I slid the frame under my arm, took 2 shirts and a pair of socks and walked back into the rain. The wheels on the busted suitcase snagged in a shallow trench that ran like a vein toward the street. One step, then another. The lights threw my shadow long and thin across the lawn, like a cutout anyone could step on. My name is Robert Callahan. Most folks call me Rob. I'm a maintenance tech at the Science Museum in Tacoma. Before that, I was a night custodian at a high school. Before that, I did a lot of small jobs that asked for a calm back in good hands. I'm a widower. My wife Laura laughed big and lived smaller than she wanted, and then she was gone. I learned how to braid hair with little elastic bands. I learned how to say no to a toy and yes to a secondhand denim jacket that made my daughter feel like herself. I learned how to stretch chicken and how to keep a house upright when grief was louder than the TV. Once a week on Fridays, I bought 1 lottery ticket, Mega Millions or Powerball. I didn't care which. I got it at Nora's Quick Stop. On the corner of Maple and 8th, I signed the back at the counter every time before I even put it in my wallet. Because the signs on the wall told me to, and because it felt like locking a door, are Callahan block letters, trying to be neat. I didn't buy the ticket to get rich, not really. I bought it like some people light a candle, a warm little hope. You could put in your pocket for a week. The night the numbers landed, the sky was the color of wet asphalt. I had stayed late at the museum because a screw backed out of an exhibit hinge, and the case wouldn't sit flush. The kids would lean on it if it wasn't right, and then something would break, and a dad would get blamed. I hate when dads get blamed for things they didn't do, so I fixed it. At home, I made a grilled cheese and set the ticket on the table next to the mail. The TV was on low. The numbers crawled across the bottom. 4, 19, 27, 33, 48, 9. I checked once, twice a third time. 'Cause sometimes your eyes misbehave when your heart thumps. The kitchen went quiet in that strange way, like the house itself took a breath with me. I picked up the ticket and turned it over. My name was on the back. R. Callahan. Large and clear. With the pen, I keep taped to the inside of my wallet because I always lose pens. I didn't jump or shout. I turned the burner off under the sandwich, made a cup of coffee I didn't need, and sat down. Okay, I said to the table. Okay? I called my daughter. Dad, I can't talk, she said, breathless and happy, music and voices loud behind her. It's a big night. Eddie got a table at Lumen. We never get Lumen. Can I call you? Tomorrow? It's important, I said. It's always important, she said, but she said it with a smile. Then softer, the old Heather peeking through. Are you okay? I'm more than okay, I said. And I would have told her the number, would have told her I wanted to pay off her student loans and fix the roof and fund the community garden, where Mrs. Nguyen taught kids to grow tomatoes, but she was already talking again. Tomorrow. Promise. Love you. The line clicked. I put the phone face down on the table and laughed at nothing. I slid the ticket into the zip pocket of my jacket and hung the jacket by the back door where I always hang it. I wrote "Call Washington Lottery" on the pad by the phone. I went to bed and slept the way you do when joy and fear share a pillow. In the morning, the jacket still hung there, like always. It felt light when I lifted it, but I didn't feel the wrongness until my fingers found the open zipper. I checked the inside. I checked the counters, the sink, the mail, under the mail, the trash, the top of the fridge. I checked the silly places inside the flour bin, in the freezer behind the bag of peas. Like a ticket might grow wings and go somewhere cold. Then I set my hands flat on the table because my legs had decided they didn't trust the floor. I texted Heather, no answer. I called, no answer. At 11:23, my phone buzzed. We did it. Oh my God, we actually did it. I'm shaking, can you believe it? I'll call later. Love you. Wait. I boiled water because that's what I do when the world goes off its tracks. I didn't drink the coffee. It went cold while I stared at the black. I opened my laptop and saw what I knew I'd see. Local ticket hits $10 million. Winner calls it a fresh start. The photo at the top was fuzzy and taken from too far away. A woman in a robe in a doorway. The curved line of a brand new driveway. The silhouette of a man's jaw leaning in like a question. No names given yet. Not needed, not for me. I called the Washington Lottery claims line. Kind woman with a careful voice explained the rules. A ticket is a bare instrument until it's signed. Once it's signed, the signature matters. But you still need the physical ticket to claim. If there's a dispute, they can put a hold on the payout while they verify. Do you have the ticket, sir? I signed it, I said. My mouth was dry. It has my name on it. I can prove I bought it. I can prove the time. You will need to provide the physical ticket, she said again, and it wasn't her fault. It's a strange kind of pain to hear somebody doing their job well when your life is sideways. I went to see my daughter. She and Eddie had moved into a high-rise in Bellevue with glass hallways that made your head feel light. I stood at their door and listened to my breath do a trick in my chest. Eddie opened with his chin already lifted. Rob, he said like we were pals. He stepped out just far enough to make the doorway his. Bare feet. Expensive watch that wanted the light too. Look at it. Now's not great. We're celebrating. Where's Heather, I asked. Busy, he said. Easy smile. It's a life-changing day and all. Where's my ticket? Your ticket? He tipped his head, and you could hear the next lie slide into place. Buddy, Heather bought it. Ran down to the store after work. She's been doing it for months. Habit. Look, I know this is exciting for you too, but let's not get confused. It's signed with my name. He kept his smile, but his eyes flashed quick and mean fear shows up even in pretty faces. We'll check, he said. Heather came out then, hair in a towel, skin pink from the bath. She looked young and far away and like my little girl and a stranger all at the same time. Dad, we did it. We won. It was that word again. Where is it? I asked. The ticket. Safe, she said. Eddie put it safe. Don't look at me like that. I bought it. It's mine ours. May I see the back, I asked. Careful. Just the back. Eddie's put. It's safe, she said again, and her eyes flicked to him without meaning to. I'll come back tomorrow, I said. When you've slept, there's nothing to talk about, Eddie said. We're looking at houses today. They looked. They chose. They posed by a front door wrapped in ribbon, and that's where I stood in the rain while my suitcase came apart and my daughter told me I would never see a cent. That's where I picked up the picture of her with the missing tooth. That's where I walked away. At home, I put the wet picture on the radiator. As it dried, her grin cleared. First the outline, then the eyes, then the little space where the tooth would grow back in. I stood there until the heat caught up with the glass. Then I made coffee and looked up a lawyer. Monica Alvarez had an office over a bakery that smelled like peach turnovers. She had a steady voice and a way of looking at a problem that made it smaller. I told her the whole thing, and then I told it again, because sometimes you need to talk it out twice to believe yourself. "You signed the ticket at purchase?" she asked. "I sign every time," I said. "I always have." "Can the clerk confirm that?" "Nora will," I said. "She jokes that I'm the only one who follows the sign." Monica nodded and made notes with a fountain pen. "Okay, here's what we do. I'll contact the lottery, put a hold on the payout, and request verification. We'll collect the store's security footage, time-stamped point-of-sale records, and your card statement. We'll draft a letter to your daughter. Firm. Kind will invite her to return the ticket so we can resolve this without a courtroom. No press, no threats, just facts." "A letter to Heather," I said, and the words felt heavy. "I know," she said, "but it gives her a way back, without losing face to him." Nora printed the receipt and handed it over with her chin high. "You sign every week, Rob," she said. "I tell the whole block to sign. You're the only one who listens. The camera's right there. It sees the pen in your hand. If the state wants to see you write your name, I'll brew coffee and bring chairs." The lottery put a hold on the payout by Thursday afternoon. A bland statement went out. "Prize subject to verification. No funds will be released until due diligence is complete." It sounded like paperwork. It was actually a life preserver. The realtor still posted a photo of the mansion was sold in big letters. I felt sick. Monica looked at the listing like it had insulted her personally. "They can't have paid," she said. "This is a reservation with a small non-refundable deposit to hold the property. Maybe a bridge loan with terrible terms. It will hurt them if this goes wrong." "It already did," I said, and she gave me a look that said she heard more in that sentence than the words. Her letter went to Heather's apartment and to the mansion's pretty mailbox, just in case they already had the keys, it explained. The ticket was signed by R. Callahan. It's purchased at Nora's Quick Stop at 5:54 p.m., captured on CCTV. "Can paid for with my debit card ending in 1420. It asked without drama for the ticket to be returned. It offered an appointment at Monica's office at a time that didn't give Eddie the advantage of surprise. Heather called that night from a number I didn't know. Her voice was tight as piano wire. "Why are you doing this to me?" she asked. "Why are you trying to ruin my life?" "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said. "I'm protecting what's mine. The ticket has my name on it. You said you were happy for me. I am happy that you felt hope. I am not happy to be robbed." "Don't say robbed," she said, and you could hear the flinch. "We were going to help you. Could have moved someplace nice. You could have stopped working. You could have put me in the rain." Silence. Then a small sound I recognized from when she was little and trying not to cry because she thought it would make me sad. "Eddie says you're being manipulative." She whispered Eddie would. "He says signatures are technical. He says what matters is who bought it. Nora says, I bought it. The camera says, I bought it. My bank says I bought it. The back of the ticket says I bought it. So you're taking it all. I'm doing this the right way," I said. "No police, no papers. Bring me the ticket and we'll sit down with Monica and figure out something. That doesn't break us. Don't bring it and the state will do it without caring about your feelings. That will break things you can't fix. You're threatening me." "I'm warning you," I said. "I'm asking you to come home for a night. No money talk. No Eddie. Cheese on toast. Sleep in your old room and wake up to the birds. Arguing in the gutter? Then we'll see. I'm not a little girl." "I know." She hung up. I stared at the blank screen until it dimmed. And then I went to the sink and washed a mug that was already clean, because sometimes you don't know what else to do with your hands. A week crawled by. The papers printed fuzzy photos and guessed at names. Strangers argued on the internet about people they didn't know. Nora kept coffee in a thermos behind the counter and pushed a cup into my hand when I came in for milk. "Mr. Nguyen from Up." The block fixed my porch light because he could. And because men like him need to put the world right with a screwdriver now and then. On Wednesday morning, Monica's assistant called. The lottery completed verification, she said. They want Mr. Callahan in Olympia tomorrow morning. He's the recognized winner. I sat on the stair and put my hand on the newel post like it could steady the room. Thank you, I said, and my voice sounded like someone else's. I didn't do the big photo. I didn't hold the oversized check. I sat in a clean office and listened to a woman named Janelle explain taxes and trusts and privacy and how people. You barely remember? We'll call you cousin now. We recommend you don't post on social media and you don't go on TV, she said. We also recommend you don't make any large purchases for at least 3 months. I want to go home and make coffee, I said. That's a good first purchase, she said, and smiled. They offered me a counselor and a financial advisor. I said yes to talking, no to cameras, and nothing yet to the rest. I called Nora and told her thank you. I called Monica and told her I was heading back. When I walked out into the pale winter sun, the world looked the same. A bird hopped on the curb and watched me like it was judging my shoes. I liked that. I liked being a man with normal shoes, walking to a normal car. That afternoon, Monica texted to say Heather had agreed to meet. Not at the mansion, not at her apartment. At Monica's office. Said she'd come alone, the text read. No, Eddie. I got there early and sat in the same chair I had sat in the first day. The bakery smell from downstairs climbed the stairwell and made the whole place feel like Saturday mornings used to feel. Heather came in with a canvas tote bag and my old sweatshirt with the museum logo on it. She looked smaller, not thinner, not really, just smaller in the way shame makes you. I saw your name, she said, standing, not sitting. On the papers, on the check, I saw it and I went cold. I knew. She sat down like her legs remembered what chairs are for. I'm sorry, Dad. Real apologies are heavy. You can hear the lift in the chest it takes to say them. I know, said. Monica brought water and left us for a minute. The door cracked enough that we knew we weren't alone with our worst habits. Where's Eddie? I asked. Gone. She said, he left when the hold went on the money. Said he'd be right back. He wasn't. She looked down at her hands, picked at a thread on her sleeve, then said he didn't hit me. He just explained things until I couldn't hear myself anymore. I wanted to find him and put my fist in his smile, and if you want to judge me for that, fine, I'm a dad. There are parts of me older than my good manners. We're going to fix this, I said. And I meant it the way a man with a toolbox means it. No miracles. Just steps. You and me. Slow and steady. We don't let strangers write our story. She nodded and blew out a long breath that sounded like a tire finding the right pressure. Okay, she said. Okay. Monica came back with a folder and the kind of voice people use when they guide you across a busy street. Here's what I suggest, she said. We create a trust. Rob funds it. Heather becomes a beneficiary. It pays for a roof for health, care for schooling if that's in the plan. For a modest life that belongs to you, Heather, not to boyfriends or headlines. It has rules that protect you from people who talk fast. It has a board so money moves when it's supposed to and stops when it should. We add counseling for both of you because money doesn't fix relationships, work does, and we keep the press out of it. Heather blinked at the word trust. Can we not call it that? She asked. It sounds like losing. Call it a bridge, Monica said. You two aren't on the same side right now. This gets you across the river. Signed the papers we needed to sign. Made agreements I never thought I would make with my own kid. Did the hard part quiet, no cameras, no windows. When we stepped out onto the sidewalk, a slice of sun landed on the concrete like a blessing. I won't tell you, we hugged right there and everything was fixed. We didn't. We walked to the corner. I bought her a peach turnover from the bakery. She took a bite and laughed without meaning to when the sugar dusted her nose. I reached over and wiped it away the way I used to. We stood there for a breath too long and then the light changed and we crossed. After that, life didn't explode. It unfolded. I still went to work for a while because I like the feel of a screwdriver finding the right groove. I like how books sit square when you line them up, like saying hello to Mr. Nguyen and hearing him tell me the same joke about banana bread. I bought a better kettle. I fixed the porch rail. I went to the cemetery with fresh flowers and told Laura I had done my best and hoped she'd be proud of me. Anyway, Heather moved out of the high-rise and into a small apartment in Renton with her friend Tasha from middle school, who knows how to roast a chicken and balance a checkbook without making it a moral lesson. Heather got a job as a teacher's aide at a preschool, which pays less than Instagram says you deserve, but gives you hand-drawn cards that say, Ms. Heather, you are an IC. She started seeing a woman named Rose who takes pictures of puddles and can make a pastry crust by feel. Heather laughed more. It came back slow, like a bird that forgot it knew the way. Eddie circled like a fox. Men like him don't vanish. He tried to sell a story to a tabloid about how I manipulated my daughter and stole what was spiritually hers. He called me from a blocked number and told me he had an investment that would double my money in 6 months. It'll get you out of that little life, he said. No, I said. You won't even hear the pitch. No. You'll regret this. I already regret not putting you on your backside the night you made my daughter stand in a doorway and pretend. She was bigger than me. He hung up with a noise like a spoon dropped on tile. Later, somebody richer than us took him to court for a different lie. I didn't follow the case. You can make yourself sick drinking other people's poison. I won't pretend the money solved everything. People think a bank balance is a magic wand. It's not. It's a shovel. You can dig yourself out of a hole with it. You can also dig the hole deeper if you're not careful. We used it to pay for simple things that stay paid. We set up funds at the community center so the gym could stay open after 6, and the lights on the soccer field didn't go dark at the end of summer. We bought coat vouchers for the school. We put new shelves in the library and a better lock. On the garden shed, we didn't buy a mansion, bought a small house with a yard big enough for tomatoes and a grill. I bought my neighbor Mr. Nguyen a new ladder because his was missing a step, and he still climbed it. The day the last of the legal dust settled, Heather came over with a sack of potatoes and said, "Do you want to make shepherd's pie?" We made a mess. We argued about whether peas belong in it. Put them in because they're green and stubborn like us. We ate at the table and watched the streetlights come on, one after the other, like the city blinking awake. Later, when the dishes were done and the trash taken out, I took the photocopy of the ticket out of the drawer. The original sleeps in a safe deposit box. The copy is for reminders. I set it on the table. R. Callahan looked back at me in big plain letters. Heather put her hand on the paper and smiled. "It was your name all along," she said. I nodded. "It was always going to be our life," I said. "That's the part that matters." We didn't talk about the rain that night. We didn't bring up the door or the lights or the way a suitcase looks when it doesn't know what to do. We let those things sit in the room without touching them. Sometimes that's the work letting the worst moment be part of the house without letting it run the place. There's more to tell. About the day the mansion deal came back to bite in a way I didn't see coming. About an envelope that arrived with no return address and a photocopy of a different signature on a different ticket and a fresh round of trouble. About the time Heather stood up to an investor who spoke fast and smiled hard and told him no, in a voice that made him blink. About the quiet ways money tests a person more than poverty ever did. About how I learned to say I'm sorry in new ways, and how she learned to say, "I forgive you," without making it a gift I had to earn with tricks. Asterisk, a fat envelope arrived at my place. A couple of weeks after we signed the papers with Monica, it was addressed to Heather in a tidy font that made my stomach feel like a fist. I texted her a photo of the front, and she came over while the kettle heated. We opened it at the table. The letterhead was from a firm with a fancy name, Wallace and Finn Chand. The first paragraph was all congratulations, which is how you know. The rest won't be? They were deeply concerned that the earnest money provided for the mansion had been remitted by a short-term lender at a punitive rate, and due to failure to timely perform, the deposit was forfeit unless the buyer chose to proceed to closing within 10 days. A second letter, stapled behind, was from Northwest Capital Lending. It referenced a bridge loan at 19%, a personal guarantee signed by Heather, and attached the application, her name, her social. An email address that wasn't hers, but looked close enough, and a signature that pretended to be her own. The exact kind of forgery that looks right until you love the person it's imitating. Heather went white around the mouth and pushed her chair back like the table had moved closer by itself. I didn't sign any of this, she said, but she said it like a person who wondered if maybe she had signed something once somewhere. Under a spell, I took the paper, and there it was, the thing I'd been waiting to see in plain black. Eddie's handwriting was neat when he wanted it to be. He'd always written the tail of an R like it was tired. "We're not paying this," I said. "We're not paying a dime of this." Heather nodded, fast. Her hands trembled in a way that made me want to call all the adults I knew when I was a kid and ask them how they managed their own hands in rooms like this. Monica took the folder apart like she was undoing a knot. "The sales contract is void," she said, eyes moving quick, was induced by misrepresentation and a forged guarantee. The deposit was not Heather's free choice. As for the lender, they failed to verify identity on a higher-risk instrument, which is malpractice with a logo. "We're going to send 4 letters. One to Wallace and Finch to rescind, one to the lender to demand withdrawal and correction, one to the credit bureaus to freeze and flag, and one to the Attorney General because I like when people who scare others for a living get a letter from an office that scares them back." She did it all before dinner. We ate grilled cheese over the sink because it was that kind of day. The following afternoon, Wallace and Finch wrote back with a tone that pretended we were all friends again. Of course, they said. They only wanted what was fair, and in light of new information, they were happy to release Heather with a modest administrative fee to cover their time. Monica called their managing partner and said, "No," in a voice that felt like a hand. On a sternum, the fee disappeared. Northwest Capital fought harder. They sent an email that used the word unfortunate 3 times. Monica wrote back with 4 attachments, a police report number, an affidavit from Heather stating she hadn't signed, copies of texts where Eddie told her he'd handle the boring paperwork, and a reminder that 19% on a bridge loan is a fire disguised as a blanket. She hit send and went to get her car from the meter. When she came back, the reply was already in her inbox. They were considering their position. "I've learned that sometimes grown men need 10 minutes to realize they're about to lose a game they thought they invented." The realtor posted a story on social media about a difficult client, careful enough not to name names. Nora saw it and sent me a screenshot with a string of thundercloud emojis. I told her to rest her thumbs. Not everything needed our breath. A week later, a different envelope. Worked as hard as it could to look official and never would. Inside was a photocopy of a lottery ticket from a different state. A sticky note stuck to the corner with 4 words in caps. He did this in Portland. The ticket was a $50,000 scratcher from Oregon, and across the back, in big and trying to look casual, was a signature. Rich Callahan. When I looked long enough. The C had the same little hook Eddie made when he wrote the word cash on receipts. It wasn't proof by itself. It was a breadcrumb. It was a prepaid cell number on the note. I called. A woman answered on the 3rd ring and said hello, like she expected bad news. "He did it to me," she said before I could introduce myself. "He called himself Evan. My name's Chelsea Reed. He told me his uncle always signed tickets because he was the lucky one. Said it was just their thing. The clerk didn't care. Nobody ever does, until they do." Chelsea told me her story in quick breaths, her boyfriend with a smile. The small win he made bigger by telling the story again and again. A forgery nobody challenged because forgery sounds like a movie. When she tried to leave, he told her she was ungrateful. When she left anyway, he told her she'd never manage without him. He laughed when she cried. He took money because if you let people take small things, they take bigger ones with less ceremony. "Why send this to me?" I asked. "Because someone sent me your daughter's Instagram when the photos went up," she said. "She looked like me, except she had a dad who might answer the phone." Monica called a detective she knew in Oregon. Detective Carla Morales phoned back, sounding like she'd been waiting for this shape to appear in a puzzle she'd been staring at too long. Patterns get you there, she said, and thanked us for the copy. Eddie's name was different in her file, but the photographs were the same. You would think putting the lid on one fire would keep the rest from spreading. That's not how it goes. Money is an accelerant. So is shame. Heather asked to meet Eddie once, in public, to give back a ring he had talked her into wearing before. The night of the rain, we picked a coffee place with big windows and chairs you couldn't hide behind. She told me not to come. I told her I'd be 3 doors down at the hardware store, and if she tapped twice on the glass, I would walk in without a question. She rolled her eyes, but she didn't argue. Eddie arrived late. He always did. He made lateness look like generosity. He sat without asking and reached across the table like he was going to fold her hand into his. She moved her cup into the space he thought was his and set the ring in the saucer. "I don't want this," she said. "I don't want you." We smiled, like a man does when he's about to use every tool he has. Words can be wrenches, he used. Then he told her she was weak. He told her she was cruel. He told her she'd be nothing without him. He told her I was manipulating her. He told her she was too pretty to be alone. He told her nobody else would understand the life she could have had if she hadn't been so stubborn. He tried the whole set. She drank her coffee and let him talk until he ran out of ways to spin. Then she said no, like it was the smallest, sharpest word in the world, and she got up. He reached out, just a twitch, just enough to make the barista look over. Heather didn't tap the window. She didn't need to. She walked out past him and straight into the air like a person who had found the door her whole body had known was there. I stood 2 doors down with a packet of screws I didn't need, my hands shaking. When she got to me, she laughed at the screws and said, "You can never have too many." We both understood what we were really talking about. The community center on Maple had been limping along for years. Leaky roof. Lights that flickered like they were trying to communicate in Morse. Joyce Simmons ran it with stubborn love. Everyone called her Ms. Joyce, or, if you were one of her kids, Mama Joyce. She asked for nothing bigger than a box of paintbrushes. And the truth? I went to see her with a check folded in my wallet and Monica's voice in my head say, "Yes, to small, useful things. Think twice about grand gestures, Ms." Joyce walked me through the gym in her sensible shoes. "I don't want your name on a building," she said, before I could speak. "No offense to names. I want electricity that doesn't short when the microwave and the scoreboard make eye contact. I want the girls' basketball team to have uniforms that fit the girls we have, not the girls from 1999. I want a line item that says light bill that keeps the lights on. You want to be a hero? Bring paper towels and pay the guy who fixes the boiler in January without asking me to sign my soul." I wanted to clap, set up a fund that did exactly what she said. The first night the new lights came on, the gym looked like it believed in itself. Jaden hit a 3 from the corner and ran back on defense like she had wind under her shoes. Maya brought a stack of flyers about free tutoring to practice and bossed the younger kids into taking them home. I sat in the bleachers and cheered for both teams and cried once, quietly, because the world got a tiny bit better in front of my face and it wasn't complicated. Therapy was not what I expected. I thought it would be talking and nodding and some polite homework about feelings. Dr. Carol Whitman had hair the color of steel and boots like she meant business. The first session, she had us write 2 sentences on index cards without showing each other. One was the sentence we'd wanted to hear at the door under the floodlights. The other was the sentence we wish we'd said. I wrote, "Come inside, kiddo, and don't let a man teach you to be cruel to feel strong." Heather wrote, "I'm scared and I need help." We swapped cards and sat there with air thick in our throats. Dr. Whitman didn't say much. She didn't have to. She circled words with a pencil and left them there. We came back every week for a while, and sometimes nothing big happened. And sometimes something did, and we drove home with the windows cracked to let our chests cool. Not all attention is bad, but a lot of it is cheap. A gossip site wrote a little piece about me controlling my adult daughter with a trust, about strings attached and golden handcuffs. They used a photo of the back of my head from a day I didn't know someone was behind me. Heather read it and laughed, then cried, then got mad for 15 minutes. Then made brownies and took half the pan to Ms. Joyce, who told her to stop reading nonsense and stir the batter like she meant it. A man named Carter Voss, with a jaw like a golf commercial, asked for a meeting. He wanted to name a field after me. He had a plan for social impact and a packet with glossy pages. He used the words branding synergy more than you should in one coffee. He wanted a plaque with my name in bronze and a giving level. That made my teeth feel like I needed to floss. I told him no. He blinked, then smiled like no was a word he could negotiate into a yes if he just pushed the right place. He didn't find the place. He left with his packet and his jaw. Ms. Joyce called the next day and told me the good mop had finally died and reminded me where to send the check for a new one. Eddie didn't go quiet. He isn't a quiet man. He tried to file a change of address, with a trust accountant using an email that looked like mine if you squinted. Monica's office caught it in a filter they'd set up for clumsy thieves. She added a second layer of verification to everything, and a password so dumb nobody would guess it because smart people only try to crack smart codes. She chose Laura, and when she told me, I put my hand over my eyes for a second and then nodded detective. Morales called one afternoon with the tone of someone who'd found the end of a thread. We've got him on 3 counts forgery too, identity theft, and criminal impersonation, she said. He tried to pick up a wire at a check cashing place with a license that wasn't his. The clerk drew a star on the receipt the way they do when they think something's off. That star is going to save someone's future. He skipped his first court date. They picked him up at an airport 2 days later with a passport application, in a different name and a ticket to a place that would have made him feel big and no one else would have cared he existed. He called me from jail. I didn't answer. He wrote a letter I didn't open. I gave it to Monica. She put it in a file in case a judge ever needed it and never told me what it said. Not all words should be let out. Spring came, then real summer. The kind of Pacific Northwest summer that feels like you're getting away with something. The tomatoes in my yard took their time, then blushed all at once. And I ate one over the sink with salt and let it drip down my wrist because Laura used to laugh when I did that. Mr. Nguyen installed a new door on my shed without telling me. He was going to. I pretended to be angry and then hugged him in a way that made him pat my back like I was a misbehaving nephew. Nora put a small sign by her register that said in her neat, sharp letters, "Sign your tickets, baby," and if anyone asked why, she said, "Because I said so," and that was that. Heather brought Rose to Sunday dinner, and I liked her the way. You like someone who brings stories into a room without taking any away. She took pictures of my hands peeling carrots and printed one and brought it back to me in a frame. "You build things," she said. And I put it on the shelf next to the photo of the missing tooth because both were true. One afternoon, a package arrived with no return address, heavier than paper, lighter than anything you'd worry about. Inside was a shoebox with a cheap velvet ring box in it, and inside that, nothing, just air and a note that said, "Should have been yours." Heather read the note and went very still. She sat down and placed the box on the table and pushed it away, like it might bite. Then she pulled it back, opened it again, and closed it. "It never was," she said, and dropped the whole thing into the trash with a soft thud that sounded like a door latching. I took the bag out immediately and walked it to the bin at the curb. Some symbols you don't leave in the house overnight. A smaller trouble found us in August. An accountant at a charity we'd helped fund called to say a donor list had been scraped and someone was sending out emails using my name to ask for gift cards. The emails were clumsy, the kind of grammar that tells you the writer never loved a sentence. We posted a note on the community board, told Ms. Joyce, told Nora, told the church. People laughed and then got stern. The scam ran out of oxygen in a day. It bothered me longer than it should have, not because of the money, but because I hated seeing my name used to lean on old ladies. I went back to the museum because school groups were returning, and the dinosaur jaw had a screw that liked to wander. I liked the buzz of kids pretending not to be interested in bones that are older than God. I walked the floor and tightened what needed tightening and watched a boy in a too big hoodie stand in front of a meteorite and go quiet like someone had put a blanket on his shoulders. The good kind of quiet. It's the kind where your head makes room for something bigger than you. I nodded at the rock and at the boy and left them there together. The last move Eddie tried surprised me because it wasn't about money. It was about attention. A charity gala popped up on social media with a rented ballroom and a flurry of hashtags. It used my name in bold and Ms. Joyce's logo without asking, and it promised exclusive access to athletes. We'd never met, and a raffle prize of dinner with me in a place I couldn't afford on my own dime. The ticket link went to a site that looked like it had been designed by a man who thought fonts were personality. Monica called the number on the site and let it ring twice. It went to voicemail. She called the hotel. They had no record of a booking. Detective Morales called a different number that lined up behind the site and said she'd been meaning to throw a party of her own. We didn't set up a sting with microphones and wires. We didn't need to. We told the truth in enough places. And the lie died the way lies die when nobody feeds them. The ballroom stayed dark that Saturday night. The only people who showed were two teenagers in thrift store, suits who bought $50 tickets because they thought maybe this would be the fancy thing their lives never had. Ms. Joyce put them in her car, drove them to a diner that still had red vinyl booths, bought them pancakes at 9 at night, and told them they were worth real things, not cheap tricks. When she dropped them at home, she texted me, "We're fine," and I believed her. There's a photo on my fridge now. It's not the lottery ticket copy. That lives quietly in a folder. The photo is of Heather on a rainy day, hair up under a beanie, crouched low to take a picture of a fat slug working its way across the sidewalk, Rose laughing behind the lens. The slug is ridiculous and determined. The world is wet and bright. I like that it exists. People still ask what I bought. I tell them, better lights for the girls' team, a lock that doesn't stick on the garden shed, new shelves at the library, a scholarship in Laura's name for kids who draw on napkins. They look disappointed sometimes, like I didn't understand the assignment. Then they come to a game and see Jaden hit another corner three under lights that don't buzz. And they stop being disappointed and start clapping time with the rest of us. Every now and then, something small sends me back. A smell. The click of a lock. The snap of a ribbon in wind. The floodlights in my head flare. The rain starts up in my bones, and I hear that sentence again, not one penny. I've learned to let the weather pass. I make coffee. I wipe the counter. I text Heather a picture of something stupid like a carrot shaped like a foot. She sends back a photo of a child's drawing from her classroom, a purple cat with 7 legs and my name spelled Robert, because the kid likes the sound and. Laugh out loud in the quiet kitchen, and the storm lifts. I thought a windfall would turn me into a different kind of man. It didn't. It made me more of what I already was. Stubborn, careful, soft where I can be, hard where I have to be. It didn't build me a new life so much as give me new tools to tend the old one. I'm glad for that. I like my life. I liked it before. I like it now. The edges are smoother. Kettle works better. The chairs don't wobble. People are the same, but we see each other more clearly. Sometimes Heather sits at my table and looks at the photocopy. "It's still wild," she says, touching the edge like it might be hot. "I almost ruined us." "You didn't," I say. "We bent. We didn't break." He looked at me with those same eyes that looked up at the museum T-Rex when she was 4 and declared his teeth too extra. She says, "Thanks for walking away," and I know exactly what she means.
That
Choosing a different place to stand. We're okay. That's not a headline. It's better. It's the kind of sentence you only get to say when you've earned it one quiet, stubborn day at a time. If you want me to carry on, I can. There's the fall Heather took on a trail and the stranger who stayed until I got there. The winter we tried to host Thanksgiving and the turkey fought back. The spring we opened the community garden's gate and found the beds full of volunteer sunflowers, like the ground remembered. There's the day Eddie's name finally stopped coming up in my head first thing in the morning and what took its place. There's a lot of ordinary left, and I'm not tired of telling it. Asterisk, the fall happened in late September on a trail at Point Defiance, where the ferns make a green tunnel and the air smells like rain even when it's dry. Heather and Rose went ahead because I walk like a man who knows his knees. And I like to stop and look at mushrooms I can't name. My phone buzzed with a pin and a message that said, "Slipped. Don't panic." I panicked in a very organized way. I took the faster path around the bluff and found them where the trail narrows near the overlook. "A runner in an orange beanie Caleb," he said, between breaths stood nearby, hands on his hips, like he'd decided to be a guardrail. Heather sat in the dirt, one shoe off, ankles swelling like it thought it was a balloon. I'm okay, she said. She wasn't lying. Pain isn't the same as danger, but it can feel like it. Caleb had already done the smart things. Jacket under her knee, foot elevated, bandana tied loose to keep the swelling honest. Rose was calm, the way good people get when they're scared, slow and wide-eyed and very gentle. Like talking to a skittish dog. You called me, I said. She rolled her eyes at the obvious truth and squeezed my hand. We made a chair with our arms and carried her to the car a few hundred feet at a time. Caleb jogged ahead to warn people coming up the narrow part because hikers don't always know how to share a ledge when they're chasing a view. You good? Kept asking, and we kept saying yes. The parking lot, I turned the seat all. The way back, wrapped her ankle in a bag of ice from the cooler we keep because Rose likes to plan for lemonade, and drove the slow way to urgent care. The nurse behind the glass slid a clipboard through the slot-like dealing cards. Twist, no fracture, good brace. A lecture about rest Heather had no intention of following. And a pair of crutches won't fit in any trunk like they should. The way home, she leaned her head against the window and watched the trees run backward and said, You came, like I'd had a choice. I'll always come, I said. And the words were easy, like breathing after you remember how at home. We did the ritual of ice and pillows and the TV turned down low so it didn't think it was the boss. Rose took photos of their shoes by the door, her muddy boots. Heather's one sneaker, a battered work. Suzanne printed it later and put it in a frame with the trail map folded behind it. Proof we keep going, she said, and set it on. The shelf in the hall, Dr. Whitman claimed she didn't assign homework. But she assigned a kind of homework that felt like the opposite of school. Make a ritual, she said one day, ticking off items on her fingers, not a shrine to thee. Worst night, a ritual to your persistence. Something you can do when the bad weather comes back. Tried a few. Lighting a candle. Too solemn. Writing down the meanest thing our heads said and throwing it out. Too satisfying to become a habit. Finally, we landed on this. We keep a jar in the kitchen with smooth stones from Owen Beach. When a day goes right, you put a stone in. When a day goes wrong, you put a stone in. The jar fills either way. The trick is remembering you still get to put your hands on the stones. Thanksgiving. It seemed like a good idea when we said it out loud in September. We'll host, Heather declared in a moment of optimism so bright it made the kitchen feel bigger. We made a list. It was a sensible list, the kind that lulls you. Turkey, potatoes, green beans, pie chairs from the community center, card. Table from Mr. Nguyen. Rose would do the crust. Monica would bring rolls. Ms. Joyce promised mac and cheese that changes how you define mac and cheese. Nora laughed and said she'd bring her famous store-bought pie with dignity. It went wrong in the friendly ways at first. The turkey was too big for my roasting pan by 1.5 inches, which is exactly the kind of measurement that laughs at you. The brine bag split like a water balloon in the sink and turned the kitchen floor into a slip hazard. The smoke alarm proved it was loyal. The gravy refused to thicken and then decided to be concrete in the 3 minutes I wasn't looking. And then it went wrong in a way that tightened my chest for reasons that had nothing to do with poultry. Heather and Rose were at the door taking coats and laughter and pies. I stood by the stove with a wooden spoon, stirring something that didn't need stirring, when 2 men I didn't know walked in like they belonged. Sharp haircuts, matching, smiles. The taller one put a wrapped box on the counter and said, Mr. Callahan, Carter sent us to capture a few photos for the piece on your generosity. We won't be in the way. Out, I said. We're from Seattle Monthly, the shorter one said, as if that changed the way doors work. Out, I said again. I didn't move. People read body language. Sometimes you need to make your body into the language they looked at each other, then at the food, then toward the laughter, because vultures love a crowd. I took the wrapped box off the counter and put it back in his hands. It was heavy and made the short one scowl. The tall one tried a different angle. Just a few minutes. Your story could help people. Your story can wait for a phone call it's never going to get, I said. They left. They complained about the front steps like gravity had personally wronged them. When the door clicked shut, I put both hands on the counter and breathed until my shoulders remembered where to live. We ate around a too small table with a bridge of plywood on sawhorses. The turkey fought but lost. The mac and cheese won easily. Monica made a toast with club soda. Nora fell asleep in my chair at the very end with a paper plate in her lap and a fork still in her hand, like a weapon she wished she didn't need. When everyone was gone and the house exhaled, Heather and I stood by the sink up to our elbows in soapy water, and she said, "When those men came in, it felt like the doorway again." "I know," I said. "I hate that feeling." "I didn't freeze this time," she said. "That felt new." It did. 60 days later, in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and coffee, and the faint worry that never leaves a place like that. A clerk called Eddie's latest name. He pleaded to 3 counts. 1 for the forged guarantee. 1 for the change of address trick. 1 for the ID he tried to use with a photo that wasn't his and eyes that were. He looked smaller. I don't say that to make myself bigger, I say. Because it surprised me in a way that left a taste. We sat in the back, me in a shirt with a collar, and Heather in a sweater that made her look like the kid used to curl up under a blanket and steal my socks. Detective Morales nodded at us once, and then turned her eyes back to the front. Chelsea Reed flew up from Portland and sat on the other side with a man who held her hand in the quiet parts. The judge did the cadence judges do. Words, numbers, conditions. A list of names that weren't ours of people he'd nudged and lied to. Restitution where money could substitute for harm, and stern acknowledgement where it couldn't. The judge asked if anyone wanted to speak. Dr. Whitman had told us to write something we could read or not read, and to be okay either way. I held my paper. Heather held hers. We didn't go up. It wasn't bravery or cowardice. It was a decision not to feed anything in that room with our air. Eddie glanced back when the cuffs went on. Quick and involuntary, like a man turning it, a sound he couldn't pin. His eyes met mine for a breath. There was no message in it. Not apology, not challenge. Just a flat gray color that reminded me of the sound of rain against a cheap window. Then he was gone, just a man in a line going through a door he didn't control. On the sidewalk, Chelsea lit a cigarette, then remembered she didn't smoke anymore and laughed. "You good?" she asked us. "We're okay," Heather said, and I liked how easily the word came. Chelsea nodded. Her man Jared, he said, told us they were moving. A fresh start, he said, and we all laughed, because sometimes phrases get ruined. And you have to rinse them with jokes before you can use them again. Winter came in with an honest cold, the kind that makes the siding crack like it's settling. Old debts. The community garden slept, but not completely. In March, when we opened the gate, volunteer sunflowers poked out of the beds like they'd drawn their own map while the rest of us weren't looking. Ms. Joyce called them God's graffiti. I painted 2 new benches the color of mustard, because gray had had enough of us, and we'd had enough of gray. I set up a scholarship at Heather's old high, school in Laura's name, small on purpose, aimed at kids who want to make things with their hands, welders, bakers, HVAC, apprentices. The letter we sent to the guidance counselor said, "For the ones who keep the world going when stories stop being stories and start being rooms with lights that flicker." The first recipient was a girl named Donnie, who brought her acceptance letter to Norris and showed everybody, because that's what pride looks like when it's loud and right. We kept going too. Dr. Whitman, not every week, just enough to keep the muscles warm. One day she asked, "Whose name do you wake up to in your head?" I said without thinking, "Laura," and then after a beat, "Heather." I realized Eddie's name hadn't been there when I opened my eyes in weeks. I'd been stretching in the kitchen and thinking about whether the coffee grounds needed grinding, and if the weather would hold for the Little League game, and whether the basil would survive a surprise cold snap. Ordinary had come back and sat down. It didn't announce itself, it just was. I taught a teen volunteer at the museum how to seat the T-Rex jaw screw so it didn't wander. His name was Malik, and he had hands that wanted to fix more than they broke, which is a gift. He listened with his eyes. When we were done, he wiped his palms on his jeans and said, "Feels good," and I said, "It does," and we stood together under the big fossil and watched a second grader tilt her head back so far she almost fell over. We kept our rituals. Stones in the jar, gratitude said out loud even when cynical felt cooler. This is corny, Heather would complain, then say the thing anyway. Coffee that isn't burnt, or no traffic on I-5, or the smell of Rose's hair. And we'd grin because love makes you sappy, and sappy is not a crime. A letter arrived from the lottery one day, months after the loud parts had quieted, asking if we wanted to participate in a public awareness campaign about signing tickets. They were starting a push. "We won't use your names," the letter said. "We'd like to use your story." I called Monica. She read it twice and said it's good. It's also okay to say no. I said yes. It was a small spot. 30 seconds. A plain voice said, "Sign your ticket," over a shot of a hand signing the back of a stub, a pen clicking, a wallet closing. You didn't see faces. You saw a pen and a habit. Nora cheered at the TV when it ran once during a Mariners game and pointed at her countersign like a coach. "That's right," she told an old man, buying a crossword and a pack of gum. "Click, sign, copy. Go on, do it now." He did, grinning like she'd knighted him. One evening in late spring, Heather came over with a stack of drawings from her classroom. The kids had drawn what safe looks like. There were houses with big doors and dogs with big smiles and a teacher with a cape. One little boy had drawn a person walking away from a house and another person standing in the doorway, both with tears. In the sky, he'd drawn a sun and clouds and rain all at once. Because kids understand weather better than the rest of us. "What did he say?" I asked. "He said they still love each other," she said. She put the drawing on the fridge, with a magnet shaped like a tomato, and we stood there in the cool hum and nodded at the crayon truth of it. I visit the safe deposit box once a year now. It's like checking a fence line. I don't need to, Monica keeps better track than I do. But I like the ritual, like the quiet of the bank vault and the way the key turns with a weight you can feel in your wrist. I take the ticket out of its sleeve and look at the back. R. Callahan in block letters. Not neat. Not messy, mine. I don't think about rain when I see it anymore. I think about Nora's sin and Ms. Joyce's mop and Malek's careful hands and Heather with a ring on a saucer she didn't want. On the way home from the bank this year, the sky cracked open the way it does in June, all at once, and the street shone like mirrors. I turned on the wipers in the radio and laughed at the song because it was one Laura used to sing wrong on purpose, just to get me to look at her. I rolled the window down at a light and smelled cut grass and hot brakes and coffee and wet wool. The perfume of a life I recognize. When I pulled into the driveway, Heather and Rose were on the porch steps with a bag from the farmer's market. "We brought peaches," Rose called. Heather held up a baguette. "And bread you're not supposed to squish." We ate the peaches. Standing at the sink, juice running down our wrists, and we didn't say anything about the day we'd had or the ones coming. We didn't need to. The jar on the counter had more stones than it did the last time I'd noticed, and fewer than it would next week. We put 2 more in. We watched them settle between the others. We listened to the small sound they made hitting home. Summer leaned in hard that year. Not heat like the middle of the country. Just enough to make the sidewalks shimmer by 4 and the air taste like a match for a week when the fire's in Eastern. Washington sent their breath our way. The sky went. The wrong color white that wanted to be brown, and the weather app turned into a warning sign. Ms. Joyce. Put a note on the community board. Center open as a clean air shelter. Bring your kids, your cards, your dominoes, your patience. We showed up with box fans and 2 air purifiers Monica found at a warehouse for half the price because she knows who to call. The gym buzzed and hummed and smelled like lemon cleaner. The little ones sprawled on wrestling mats and watched cartoons. Older ones played HORSC under lights that didn't flicker. Somebody's dad grilled hot dogs outside and passed them in through the door like contraband. It felt like a neighborhood pretending to be a town on purpose. On the second smoky day, Heather and I were dropping off a bag of oranges when a low old bark came from the office. A mutt with a face you could trust sat there, cone of shame on, one ear up, one ear out. tail giving the cautious thump of a dog trying to be polite. "That's Gus," Miss Joyce said. "Belongs to Mr. Taylor, but he's in the hospital for a bit. We're dog-sitting, because I am a woman of many talents." Gus looked like someone had rubbed a lab, a beagle, and a couch together, and then forgot to iron him. He pressed his head into Heather's knee and sighed like a man off a shift. She looked at me. I looked at her. We both looked at Gus. "No," I said out loud to nobody in particular. "We are not adopting a dog." "We're not," Heather said, also to nobody. "We're fostering until Mr. Taylor gets back." Gus came home with us that night. He slept at the base of the stairs like a sentry and snored like a truck. The cone knocked into everything and learned the corners better than I ever have. Followed me to the garden and watched me pick tomatoes with the seriousness of a foreman. He took a biscuit from Mr. Nguyen like he'd been hired for it. Rose took a picture of Gus asleep on my socks and titled it "New Boss." It's when Mr. Taylor came home 2 weeks later. We walked Gus back. He trotted through his own front door like he'd never left and then turned around and sat on my foot like he could be in 2 places at once if he tried hard enough. "Come by and borrow him any time," Mr. Taylor said, and we did, somehow. We belonged to a dog without the paperwork, which is the best way if your heart can stand it. My knees started complaining in a tone I couldn't ignore. I'd make the noises older men make when I got off the couch, the kind that sound like you're moving furniture inside your bones. I went to see a man who said words like degeneration and replacement and quality of life, and a voice that had done this speech 1,000 times. "We can wait," he said. "Can keep taking the stairs like a pirate, or we can schedule it for fall and get you new hardware." "I'm too busy in fall," I said, then heard myself and laughed. "I'm not. Let's do it. Hospitals smell like lemon cleaner and worry." Heather sat in the pre-op chair holding my hand like I was about to deliver a baby. I made a joke about trading me in for a model with better knees and got a laugh out of the nurse, which seemed like good luck. The anesthesiologist introduced herself as Alana, explained the road ahead like a pilot does, and squeezed my shoulder. I didn't think about rain. Thought about the jar of stones on the counter and the way they pile up no matter which days you're having. When I woke up, my leg felt like it belonged to someone very earnest. Heather was there with bad coffee and a book she didn't read. She showed me a picture of Gus with his cone on sideways and said, "You look like this." And I said, "That's rude." Fell asleep again. Recovery was not heroic. It was boring and sore and the kind of steady march that makes you appreciate stairs you don't have to think about. Physical therapy is a room where everybody lies to themselves once and then learns to tell the truth. My therapist, a man named Brandon with a patient face, said, "You can't muscle through this." I said, "That's my whole thing." And he said, "Not this time." Did the exercises. Malik showed up on Saturday with a borrowed mower and cut the lawn in stripes so straight I wanted to measure them. Ms. Joyce organized meals in shopping bags that looked like a parade chili, cornbread, somebody's attempt at a salad that was actually dessert. Nora let herself in with a key I didn't remember giving her and left soup on the stove with a note that said, "Do not add salt." I already did, because she knows me too well. Mr. Nguyen fixed the step that had always been just wrong enough to catch your toe. People were themselves at me until I was myself again. A letter came on paper that felt like it had been ironed. The return address was a P.O. box in Federal Way. Inside was a note written in a slanted cursive that had been neat once and had learned to hurry. "My name is Elaine Walker," it read. "I believe you know my son, though you know him by names. He chose to not be mine." My chest did that thing where your heart remembers everything it has to do and forgets how to do it for a beat. "She asked to meet. I don't have money to ask for, and I'm not going to defend him," she wrote. "I just need to sit across from someone who knew the damage and didn't turn into a monster," I told Heather. She chewed her lip and shook her head. "I don't want to," she said, and she didn't have to. "You don't have to," I said back. "I might." I met Elaine at a diner off the highway with coffee that tasted like it had been brave for years. She was small in a way you'd call delicate if you didn't know better. She had hands like my mother's, capable, thin, always doing something. Even when there was nothing to do, she ordered tea. She didn't drink it. "I didn't come to tell you he's good," she said. He's not right now. I came to say I'm sorry, the way mothers say sorry for things we didn't do, because we feel like we should have built a fence around the whole world. I told her what I could without adding weight she couldn't carry. The rain, the doorway, the ticket. I told her he was good at making rooms his, until you forgot they were yours. She nodded and stared at her tea bag like it had answers. He practiced on me, she said. He was sweet until he needed something, then sweeter until he didn't. I left his father because a man can smile and strangle you with it. She stopped and took a breath. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for him. I'm asking you to know I don't confuse love with excuses. Thank you for telling me, I said. I didn't promise to write a letter to a parole board. I didn't. Hand her money. I paid for the tea. I walked her to her car and watched her drive away into traffic like anyone else on a Tuesday. When I got home, I put a stone in the jar and stood there with my hand in the mouth of the glass like a man checking a pulse. It beat steady. Heather's work bloomed. She signed up for night classes to finish her early childhood education certificate. She felt weird about using the trust to pay tuition and books because shame wears new clothes when it can't wear the old ones. It feels like cheating, she said. I should do it with my money. It is your money, I said. Just money with a seatbelt. She went anyway. She did flashcards like a teenager, muttered about observations and learning standards, and brought home stories that made the table warmer. A kid told me I smell like pancakes, she said one night, pleased and insulted at the same time. She made a sensory bin out of dry beans and scoops and said, if I had had this at 20, I would have been more fun. And I said, you were chaos and joy, you didn't need beans. On the night of her last class, she came over after and put her head on the table and cried for 2 minutes and then laughed for 3. I did it, she said, and we ate ice cream out of the carton with spoons because I'd forgotten to buy bowls that afternoon. Rose took a picture of our ridiculous faces and printed it like she does. The lottery ad ran twice more during games no one in Seattle could agree about. And then a letter arrived addressed to the hand with the pen. Inside was a thank you from a woman in Yakima whose brother had signed his ticket because the TV told him to. He'd thought it was silly. He'd done it anyway. When his roommate tried to claim the money while he was on shift at the warehouse, the signature made a mess for the thief and a path for the honest man. You don't know us, she wrote, but we know about you without knowing your name. Thank you for making sure good habits look cool enough to copy. The trust had its friction. Tasha, Heather's friend and roommate, got excited about a pop-up bakery with a name you wanted to like and a business plan that was mostly vibes. She asked Heather to co-sign a small loan. The trust rules said she couldn't without the board saying yes. The board that's me, Monica, and Ms. Joyce said no. Heather sulked for a day, then 2, and avoided my calls even though we lived 10 minutes apart. When she finally came over, she flopped in the chair with the sigh of a girl who used to be 10 and said, I know why you said no. I hate that it was you. I hate that it felt like me, I said. It was the rule we wrote when we weren't tired or guilted or charmed. The one that exists to keep you from hating me later. No, she said again, and pulled her sleeve over her hand like she used to do. Tasha's going to be mad at me. She'll be mad at the rule, I said. That's why we wrote the rule. Tasha didn't talk to me for a while. Then the pop-up fizzled before it popped when the landlord wanted a deposit that had more zeros than cents. Tasha came to dinner, looked me in the eye and said, I did the math. You saved me from learning it the hard way, and I said, you saved yourself by doing the math. And Heather rolled her eyes and said we were insufferable and then hugged both of us in a way that disproved her point. Field trips started again in the fall. Heather brought her class to the museum on a day I was on the floor. Kids wore matching shirts because chaos needs bright colors to find itself again. They clumped around the dinosaur with sticky hands and open mouths. I showed them the screw on the jaw that likes to walk and manned the button for the sound because the tech is out sick and also because I like feeling like a wizard for small people. One little girl with hair in 6 puffs stared at the fossil for a full minute and then declared, old bones are loud, which is the kind of sentence you want to tape to your wall. The kids called me Mr. Robert because one of them misread my name tag, and the name stuck for the day and made me feel like I should beep when I turned .det. Morales sent an email the week before Thanksgiving. Peel denied. It read, and Nothing else. Because sometimes an economy of words is a gift. I forwarded it to Monica and then closed my laptop. I didn't forward it to Elaine because that wasn't my job. I thought about her hands and hoped she had a friend who knew where the good diner was. We did Christmas small, a tree that leaned a little because it liked the window. Lights that worked when they wanted to. Rose found a set of old glass ornaments at a thrift store that looked like candy and clinked when you breathed on them. We gave each other the kind of presents that say, "I see you." Heather gave me a pair of socks with dinosaurs on them and a card that said, "For the screw that wanders." And I laughed harder than the joke earned, and then again later when I put them on. I gave Rose a lens cap because she always loses hers, and a book of pictures of things that didn't want their picture taken. She hugged me like I'd written her a poem. Snow came once, the kind that doesn't know what to do with itself in our town. The street went quiet and the kids took over. Heather and I built a lopsided snowman that looked like it was turning to listen. Gus ate snow, got the zoomies, and then fell asleep like a rug. Nora texted the block, "I have cocoa. Bring your own mug." And we stomped over in boots and hats and stood in her store with our cups, steam fogging the glass, watching our breath make the air look alive. On an ordinary Tuesday in January, Heather and Rose showed up with a paper bag that clinked in a look I recognized. People carry good news like it's a fragile thing you could drop. Heather put the bag on the table and pulled out a little box. It wasn't a ring box. It was a box that used to have earring backs in. She opened it and took out a little brass key. "We signed a lease," she said, words tumbling. "A little house off 19th with a yard and terrible carpet that we're going to cover with rugs until we can do better. We're not getting married yet, Dad. Don't panic," she added, laughing at my face. "We're just going to live like people who mean it." Rose held up a photo of the living room light, a radiator, windows that needed a clean. "We need help with the radiator," she said. "Radiators are my love language," I said, and we all grinned at how stupid and right that sounded. We moved them in on a Sunday with boxes labeled in Rose's neat handwriting, and a bag of bagels. That got grease on everything. The first night, the heat banged like a band the way old pipes do. I bled the radiators and the sounds moved upstairs and then settled into a purr. We ate pizza on the floor, and Gus checked the corners like security. Heather sat with her back against the wall and looked around like her eyes could touch everything. "I feel," she said, and didn't finish. They didn't have to, at the community garden in March. We opened the gate and found sunflowers already starting where we hadn't planted them. The ground keeps secrets and then tells you them in petals. Ms. Joyce called them God's graffiti again. And I made a little sign for one of the beds. "Please leave the volunteers." A kid asked what volunteer meant, and Ms. Joyce said, "Something that shows up and says, 'I'm here.'" And the kid nodded like she always knew that. Dr. Whitman asked us in April, "What does forgiveness look like? Not in your head, but on your calendar." Heather said, "It looks like not rearranging my day when a ghost calls." I said, "It looks like having Saturday plans that don't involve imaginary arguments." And we all laughed because telling the truth can be funny when it's not breaking you. I don't wake up to Eddie's name anymore. Sometimes I go a week without thinking of him at all, and when he does show up, he's smaller and blurrier, and my blood doesn't climb any ladders to meet him. I think of Laura, of the way she used to hum while she wiped the counter, of how she loved the smell of wet concrete after rain. I think of Heather complaining about traffic and then talking for 10 minutes. About a child's drawing like it's a museum piece. I think of Ms. Joyce's mop and the rattly door at the garden that finally swings clean. I think of Nora pronouncing espresso on purpose to make coffee snobs twitch on the anniversary of the rain. Heather came over with bread. "I wasn't supposed to squish in a plant," she said. "I'd probably kill, but should try not to." We didn't say what day it was. We ate grilled cheese and tomato soup because that's what days like that deserve. We put a stone in the jar together, her hand over mine. We watched it fall and settle and make room for more. There's still more if you want it. The bike Heather bought and learned to ride at 30 with a helmet like a beetle. The day the museum lost power during a thunderstorm, and we guided people out with flashlights like a parade. The morning I finally threw away the cardigan with the elbow that didn't exist anymore, and Heather rescued the buttons like they were coins. The quiet fight we had about nothing that turned out to be about everything. And how we made up by changing the smoke detector battery, because you don't. Always get to have grand episodes. The small, steady life we keep making on purpose, one good habit at a time.